They didn't invite me to my own sister's wedding, even though I paid for it. She said I didn't fit the vibe. But the smile disappeared from her face when the venue canceled everything at the last minute. And she realized this. I still remember the exact moment I found out. It wasn't through a heartfelt conversation, or a slip-up in the mail, or even an offhand comment. I didn't find out I wasn't invited to my own sister's wedding the same way someone discovers there's a party they were never welcome to by a social media post. A photo. A beautifully designed invitation card with embossed gold lettering, placed delicately on a white satin cloth. The caption read, "Starting the countdown. Can't wait to celebrate with all my loved ones on the most special day of my life." All her loved ones, but not me. At first, I thought it must be a mistake. Maybe my invitation was still on its way. Maybe she just hadn't had time to tell me in person. After all, I'd spent the last 6 months bending over backward to give her the wedding of her dreams. I paid the venue deposit. She loved it when she and her fiancé, Fernando, ran short of cash. I covered the catering down payment when my parents hesitated. I even gave her money for the dress which, ironically, she hadn't even had the courtesy to show me. I scrolled through the post, feeling my stomach clench. Friends, family, colleagues, everyone was thrilled to be part of her big day. Someone even joked about how exclusive the guest list must be. Exclusive. That's when the sinking feeling started to creep in. I sent her a text. Nothing dramatic, just a simple, "Hey, saw the post. Never got my invitation. Did it get lost?" I stared at my phone, waiting for the 3 dots to appear. They didn't. An hour passed then too. As night fell, I convinced myself I was overreacting. Maybe she was busy. Maybe she'd simply forgotten to reply. And then, at 10:34 p.m., my phone buzzed. "Marina, hey, was going to talk to you about this. Hope you understand, but we had to make some tough decisions with the guest list. It's a very select event, you know. We had to keep it elegant. No offense, but you really don't fit the vibe. I know you'll be happy for me from afar. Love you. Select event. Don't fit the vibe. Happy from afar." I read the message 3 times before it really sank in. They hadn't forgotten me. They had intentionally left me out. And I knew exactly why. I wasn't like my sister's friends, with their perfect nails, their expensive suits, and their fake laughs at exclusive cocktail parties. I didn't work in an office with a fancy title or talk about investments. I owned a mechanic shop. Luxury auto repair, Alejandro, a successful one. The kind that generated a lot of money, especially since I specialized in luxury cars like Mercedes-Benz S-Class and Porsche Cayenne. But that didn't matter in my family. To them, I wasn't an entrepreneur. I was just a mechanic with greasy hands. A guy who always smelled like gasoline, with fingers rough from years of hard work. Marina always looked down on me for that. For her, real success meant sitting in an air-conditioned office, wearing a suit, and running a respectable business. Not managing a garage, no matter how much money it generated. She never said it directly, but I saw it in her eyes every time I showed up at a family dinner in my work clothes. The slight wrinkle of her nose when I walked in, the way she'd introduce me to her friends with a quick, dismissive, "Oh, my brother? He just has a car shop," as if it were something to be ashamed of. And now, after everything I'd done for her, she'd cut me out of her perfectly planned wedding. I had financed the wedding, and somehow, I wasn't good enough to attend. I should have seen it coming. This wasn't the first time my family had made me feel like an outsider. The signs had been there for years. Little digs at family dinners, condescending remarks about my business, the way my parents beamed with pride when Marina got a promotion at elite group offices, but barely acknowledged when I expanded my shop on Calle del Sol. But no matter how they treated me, I never said no when they needed me. When my sister dreamed of a lavish wedding but couldn't afford it, who stepped up? I covered the venue deposit, the catering down payment, even part of her wedding dress. And I never asked for anything in return. "You know how expensive weddings are," she complained one night during dinner at my parents' house on Calle de los Olivos, swirling her wine glass dramatically. "If you want something nice, you have to pay for it." "Easy for you to say," she'd scoffed. "You don't have student loans. You don't have to maintain a professional image. You wore the same boots every day. That was Marina in a nutshell. To her, success was a matter of appearances. It never mattered to her that I'd built my business from the ground up, that I worked 60-hour weeks to make sure my employees had job security, that every damn euro I had, I'd earned through hard work. To her, I was just the guy with oil-stained hands and working-class problems. But still, I helped. When Marina and Fernando came up short, I made the transfer without hesitation. I told myself I was doing it for family, that I wasn't doing it for recognition. And yet, here I was, not even worthy of an invitation. The night I read her message, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every moment of the last few months, trying to understand when exactly she decided I wasn't good enough to be at her wedding. Was it when I arrived at a family gathering straight from the shop, still in my work uniform? Was it when she introduced me to her friends as my brother, he works with cars, as if I were some guy changing tires on the street? Had she always seen me this way? The next morning, I drove to my parents' house. I didn't give them a heads up. I wanted to hear what they said when they weren't expecting me. As soon as I walked in, I heard my mother, Isabel's, voice from the kitchen. "Well, you know how he is," she was saying, in that tone of quiet disappointment I'd grown accustomed to. "I just don't want him embarrassing me," Marina replied, her voice sharp with irritation. "It's going to be a sophisticated event. I can't have him showing up looking like he just crawled out from under a car." My jaw tightened. "He's family, my father," Carlos mumbled, but his voice lacked conviction. "And he should understand that this isn't about him," Marina snapped, her voice laced with frustration. "I don't need him there making people uncomfortable. He doesn't fit in that kind of environment." I'd heard enough. I pushed open the door and walked into the kitchen. My sister went pale at the sight of me. My mother suddenly decided to focus on stirring something in a pot, even though it clearly didn't need it. "So this is how you see me?" I asked quietly. Marina hesitated for a second before squaring her shoulders. "Don't take it personally. It's just not your kind of people." "My kind of people," I repeated, crossing my arms. "Come on. You know what I mean," she huffed. "All the guests are from the corporate world. Lawyers, executives, people who actually know how to network. You have nothing in common with them." "Right," I said slowly. "Because I don't spend my days sitting in an office, signing papers. I must be too stupid to hold a conversation?" "No, I never said that," she rushed to say, but her face betrayed her. My mother sighed. "Honey, it's just a different kind of event. You have to admit, you do sometimes look a little rough. Always in your work clothes and, well, you don't carry yourself like the other guests." I kept my voice steady. "I own a business. I make more money than half of those sophisticated people you're inviting. But because I don't wear a suit every day, that means I'm not good enough." Marina groaned in exasperation. "It's not about the money. It's about image. Look, you helped a lot with the wedding, and I appreciate it. But this is my day. Everything has to be perfect, and I just don't think you fit." There it was. The truth. It didn't matter that I'd paid her bills, that I'd bailed her out time and time again when she overspent, that I'd done more for this family than anyone else. To them, I would always be the dirty mechanic. I exhaled slowly. "I get it." "Oh, don't be like that," my mother interjected. "We'll have a nice family dinner after the honeymoon. Just us. That will be more your style." I smiled, but it wasn't kind. "You're right," I said, picking up my car keys. "That would be more my style. Because in my world, when someone helps you, you don't treat them like garbage." I walked out before they could say another word. On my way back to the shop, my phone buzzed with a text from Marina. "Marina, don't make a big deal out of this. You know I love you. Hope you can still help with the final cake payment. It's due Friday." I laughed. I laughed so hard I had to pull over. She actually thought I was still going to pay. That, as always, I would swallow my pride and do what was expected of me. She had no idea that I was done. By the time I reached luxury auto repair Alejandro, I'd made my decision. For years, I'd been the family's life raft. The one they turned to when things got tough. The one who always said yes, no matter the personal cost. I'd convinced myself it was my duty, that this was what family was about. But this was the last straw. Marina didn't just take my money. She took it while looking down her nose at me. She accepted every check, every transfer, every euro I gave her. But when it came time to acknowledge me in front of her sophisticated friends, suddenly, I wasn't good enough anymore. And she still had the nerve to text me about paying for her wedding cake, as if nothing had happened. They'd taken me for a fool. But not anymore. I texted her back. I'm sorry. I don't want to embarrass you by being associated with your wedding. I'm sure you'll figure it out without me. Good luck. No emojis, no fake niceness. Just a clear message. It didn't even take 5 minutes before she called. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. Then my mother. Then my father. By the time I closed up shop that night, I had 12 missed calls. The next morning, I woke up to a series of frantic messages. Marina, what do you mean you're not paying for the cake? It's already ordered. Marina, you can't just back out now. We're counting on you. Isabel, honey, don't be spiteful. It's just a misunderstanding. Let's talk. Carlos, we raised you better than this. I stared at my phone, shaking my head. Not a single apology. Not a single "we're sorry for what we did." Just demands. Just the assumption that I would continue to play my part. I called my sister back. She answered on the first ring. Oh my God, finally. Listen, I don't know what's gotten into you, but you're acting crazy. You already agreed to pay. So, I changed my mind. I interrupted. Silence. What? I changed my mind. I repeated slowly, letting it sink in. I'm not paying another cent. You'll have to figure it out on your own. Are you serious right now? She shrieked. You're really going to screw me over like this? I laughed. Screw you over? You mean like how you conveniently forgot to invite me because I didn't fit the vibe of your wedding? Or how you and Mom were talking about me like I'm some kind of embarrassment? That kind of screwing over? Ugh, this isn't the same thing. That was about appearances. I didn't mean it like that. But this is real money. A real responsibility. And it's not my problem, I said calmly. You didn't want me at your wedding? Fine. But you can't take my money and simultaneously pretend I don't exist. You made it clear that I don't belong in your world. So, I'm acting accordingly. Oh, don't be so dramatic. You have money to spare. You won't even notice it. And there it was. Not gratitude. Not even entitlement. It was pure, unmasked greed. You're right, I said, my voice now much colder. I do have a lot of money, and not a single euro of it will ever be yours again. Wait, she started to say. I hung up. This time I was done. I didn't hear from her again for the rest of the week. But my parents, they didn't let it go. By Saturday, the attempts at emotional manipulation were coming from all directions. Your sister's under a lot of stress, my mother whined. You can't do this to her, son. It's all planned already, my father added. What's a few thousand to you? Family helps family, my mother repeated, as if that meant something. But I'd heard enough. So I finally said it. Family helps family? Funny, I don't remember either of you helping me when I was starting my business. Silence. Or when I was working 16-hour days, so I could afford everything on my own. More silence. Or when I paid for half of her wedding and still got treated like garbage. Well, you can both figure it out on your own, I concluded. I'm out. I hung up and blocked their numbers. I didn't expect silence. Not from Marina. Not from my parents. Not from anyone in my family who treated me like their personal ATM for years. I expected calls, please, maybe even some thinly veiled threats disguised as phrases like, "You'll regret this," or "You're being selfish." But for 2 whole days, my phone remained silent. And that's when I knew they weren't ignoring me out of anger. They were panicking, scrambling to figure out how to replace the money I'd just taken away from them, trying to undo the damage of having assumed I'd always be there, no matter how they treated me. And then, on the 3rd day, my mother showed up at my shop. She didn't call first. She just walked in like she owned the place, her eyes scanning the cars my employees were working on, watching how they moved with precision from one task to the next. I wiped my hands on a rag and crossed my arms. Something's wrong. We need to talk, she said, her voice tight. I gestured towards the office. Of course. She walked in, sat down in the chair opposite my desk, and clasped her hands in her lap. She looked uncomfortable, like she didn't belong there. Like she'd rather be anywhere else. I took my time sitting down. I wanted her to feel that discomfort. Your sister's in trouble, she finally blurted out. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, is she? Don't play dumb. You know. I don't know, I replied, leaning back in my chair. But I have a feeling you're going to tell me. She exhaled sharply, as if she were the one entitled to be frustrated. The bakery won't deliver the wedding cake until the rest is paid. The venue is threatening to cancel the reception if she doesn't settle the outstanding balance. And she still hasn't finished paying the florist. I remained silent. The wedding is in 2 weeks, and she doesn't have the money, my mother insisted. She can't cover all this by herself. How unfortunate, I said without emotion. She blinked, surprised, as if she couldn't believe I wasn't rushing to fix the problem. You have the money, she said carefully, as if speaking to a child. You could help her. You wouldn't even notice it. I gave her a slow smile. And yet, here we are. Her nostrils flared. Stop being so spiteful. You agreed to pay, and she planned everything based on that agreement. You can't just back out at the last minute. I tilted my head. You mean how she planned her guest list without me? How curious how that works. This isn't the same thing. Sure it is. She also wanted a wedding without me in it. Perfect. That means she doesn't need my money either. For God's sake, she muttered, rubbing her temples. I waited. I waited for her to try something new, to try to manipulate me with guilt, to remind me that family helps family, that I shouldn't hold grudges, that this wasn't how I was raised. Instead, she exhaled slowly and straightened in her seat. If you don't help her, she'll have to downsize everything. It will be humiliating. People will talk. I laughed. Now we're getting to the real issue. Her face darkened. It's not just about appearances, she said stiffly. She deserves a beautiful wedding. She deserves exactly what she can afford, I corrected. And clearly, that isn't the wedding she had in mind. Her lips pressed into a thin line. So that's it then? You're just going to sit there and let your sister suffer? She's not suffering, I replied. My mother stared at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she stood up, smoothed her blouse, and adjusted the strap of her purse. You'll regret this, she said simply. I shrugged. Maybe. She left without another word. And I felt nothing but relief. In the following days, the cracks in Marina's perfect wedding plans began to show. First, she posted a vague status on Facebook. It's so hard when people you trust let you down. But I guess that's life. I didn't bite. Then a cousin called me. Dude, what's going on? Your sister is freaking out. Says you backed out of the wedding payments. True. Correct. But why? Because she didn't invite me. Silence. Then, oh.
Yeah, right.
I get it now. The next day, Marina texted me. Marina, can we talk? I waited an hour before replying. Me. Talk about what? Marina, I don't want things to be like this between us. Can we meet for coffee? I almost laughed. She didn't want things to be like this. The same sister who had deliberately excluded me from the most important day of her life because I didn't fit her image now didn't want things to be like this because it was inconvenient for her. But I was curious. So I agreed. When I arrived at Café Sol y Sombra, she was already there, tapping her perfectly manicured nails nervously against her cup. She gave me a hesitant smile. Hi. Hi, I replied, sitting down. She sighed dramatically. Look, I know you're upset, Dash. I'm not upset, I interrupted. I just finally see things clearly. She frowned. What's that supposed to mean? It means I get it now. I'm useful when you need something, But the minute I'm inconvenient for your perfect little world, you discard me. That's not fair. That's not fair, she protested. No, it isn't. I leaned back in my chair. I wasn't good enough to be at your wedding, but my money was. You can't have it both ways. She pressed her lips together. I wanted everything to be perfect. And I didn't think you'd care. Well, now you know. She hesitated. If I invite you now, will you help? I smiled. Then I stood up. Enjoy your wedding, sister. But you'll have to figure it out without me. No guilt. No obligation. For the first time in years, I wasn't burdened by their expectations. I had no reason to rush around fixing last-minute problems. No one was calling me to cover extra costs. No one was begging me to step in and save the day. Because I wasn't invited. And because I finally stopped caring. But apparently my family still cared about my money. At 11:27 a.m., I got the first call.
Mom.
I let it ring. At 11:42 a.m., my father tried. Ignored. At 12:03 p.m., my phone lit up with a text from my cousin, Javier. Javier. Dude, you are not going to believe this. The venue just kicked them out. I stared at the screen. And then I laughed. The meltdown was glorious. I'd given them every opportunity to fix their mess. But Marina had assumed anyone, would step in at the last second. But no one did. Without the final payment, the venue canceled. The staff literally locked the doors as the guests arrived. People were left standing outside in their fancy suits and gowns, confused, while the wedding planner tried to offer explanations. And my sister was hysterical. The lavish 5-tiered cake never arrived. The exclusive floral arrangements, canceled. The dream wedding she'd bragged about for months, gone. At 1:15 p.m., she finally called me. I answered. What? I said flatly. Are you happy now? She shrieked. I leaned back in my chair, amused. Why, exactly? You know perfectly well why, she yelled. The wedding is ruined. Oh, I said nonchalantly. Didn't get the money? You knew we didn't have enough money. You were supposed to help us. You promised. I let out a laugh.
No.
You assumed. Silence. You let me fail, she whispered finally, her voice trembling. No, I corrected her. You failed yourself. And then, for the first time, she cracked. I don't understand, she whispered. Why couldn't you just help? After everything we've been through. After everything I've done. My patience ran out. Everything you've done? I repeated coldly. You mean using me for years? Taking my money without a second thought? Treating me like garbage the minute I stopped being useful to you? I didn't mean it like that, she stammered. You never do, I replied coldly. That's the problem. The silence between us stretched. And then her voice broke.
So this is it?
You're really just walking away. I already did, I said quietly. You just didn't notice until now. And I hung up. The wedding was cobbled together in a relative's backyard at the last minute. No extravagant decorations. No fancy catering. Just a last-ditch setup with whatever they could find. I heard Marina spent the entire night trying to hold back tears, too humiliated to enjoy her own wedding. I didn't reach out. I didn't apologize. I didn't ask how she was. For once in my life, I let them figure it out themselves. And for the first time, I felt free. Months passed before my parents accepted that I wasn't going to change my mind. First, they tried guilt, then anger, then silence. And now they treat me carefully, like they finally understand that if they push too hard, I won't hesitate to walk away for good. My sister never apologized. But she's never asked me for money again, either. I consider that a win.
And me?
I'm still running my business.
I'm doing more than fine.
Only now, every euro I earn is mine alone.